Hey there guys, IRClevor here, and I woke up today at the crack of noon with a very unexpected email. Apparently, the Settlers Kingdoms of Anteria is back, baby! With three minor changes. First off, it's no longer a Settlers game. Secondly, it's now called the Champions of Anteria. And thirdly, it's a completely different game. Yeah. So cast your minds back to January 2015 when we had the Settlers Kingdoms of Anteria closed beta. My god, there were some bad reviews on that. There was a lot of negative feedback, and when the beta closed, we didn't hear a peep from them for 15 months. Until today, it looks like they've listened to a lot of feedback and they have a very interesting looking game now. Before we look any closer at the Champions of Anteria, let's wipe the slate clean, okay? I don't want to let the game's origins taint my opinion of what it has evolved into now. That being said, I am going to draw some comparisons to the Kingdoms of Anteria, just because it's the easiest way to explain it. For example, the art style looks very similar, both in the Kingdoms and during the missions. It's very similar in Champions of Anteria to the original Kingdoms of Anteria. Now, maybe a little bit ironically, this game is based on rebuilding and expanding your kingdom, and this is done through capturing territories. Now, when you go to capture a territory, there's a primary and a secondary objective. Of course, the secondary objective is not necessary, but you get a little bit more loot, a little bit more gold or whatever. The primary objective, of course, needs to be completed to be able to capture that territory and improve your kingdom. Your primary objectives can be anything from attacking fortifications, rescuing a spy from behind enemy lines, and generally being stealthy. There's also defensive missions where you obviously have to defend your territory, whether that's from huge attacking monsters or waves after waves of enemy faction units. I'll touch on factions later as well. So let's look at some of the combat. Now, every unit has a kind of elemental alignment. There's 5 different elements, which are fire, metal, nature, lightning, and water. 1 for each of your 5 champions. How convenient. And much like Pokemon, it's an extended game of rock, paper, scissors, where water is super effective against fire, fire is super effective against nature, etc, etc, in a big circle. So this makes the game quite tactical, which it looks like the devs have really focused on tactics in this game. You've got to remember that each of the enemies are going to be aligned to a certain element as well, so they're going to be doing extra damage to one of your guys. For example, let's say you're using this guy Vargos as your main tank. Let's assume he has a water alignment. He's not going to be able to be the main tank when fighting against electric guys. Now, when it comes to completing a mission, you're only allowed to choose 3 of your 5 heroes. So once again, you've got to think tactically. You've got to think, who are we fighting? What's the objective? And who's going to be the most useful? Basically, who are the 2 that you're going to leave behind? So I was reading through some of the information for this game, and they mentioned this thing called active pause, which is a feature in which you can pause the game. Yeah, you can pause it now. Cool. But no, it's not like you can pause the game and then nothing happens. You pause the game and then you can choose which targets to attack, because it's that tactical. So if something's jumps out of nowhere or whatever, or the battlefield changes quickly, you can pause the game and then set up your guys to attack. And this kind of reminds me of the old CRPGs like Icewind Dale or Baldur's Gate, where you pause the game, there's so much going on, you have to pause and tell all of your people to attack a target. It's actually great when you unpause and then the guy suddenly gets one-shotted by 6 people. Or six-shotted when the guy gets killed quite quickly. It's pretty cool. And that might be a feature. That looks like it's going to be a feature in Champions of Anteria. I'll have to see how well it's executed. You can pause the game though. Right, let's take a look at village expansion. Now, I've tried not to leave this to last because some of you guys are probably going to be a little bit disappointed by this. You've got to remember that Champions of Anteria has disconnected itself with the Settlers franchise, so building isn't a huge deal in this game. It looks like the building plots themselves are going to be pre-chosen, and then the player gets to choose which kind of building they want to place in those plots. It looks like different buildings are going to generate different resources, and then you'll use those resources to craft things for your champions, like potions, weapons, or other gear like that. The way plots are unlocked looks very similar to Settlers Kingdoms of Anteria, where there are different sectors that are unlocked first, and then you can place your buildings in the available plots. Finally guys, we have been promised a whole load of variety in this game. There's going to be over 200 unique units to fight against. There are different maps, different combinations of primary and secondary objectives. There's 26 different territories to capture. There's 3 different factions, all fully autonomous, all with their own agenda, and all with their unique units. I've got to admit guys, for a first announcement, this looks really interesting. Let's see how it is when it comes out in August. Maybe we'll even forgive Ubisoft for that terrible beta game they brought out. Probably not though, probably not. No. So I know there's going to be a lot of fans of the Settlers franchise that are kind of disappointed by this announcement, and let's be honest, you can't really blame them. However, think of it this way, it's better than nothing, right? It's better than just scrapping all of that source material they had and doing something completely different. Hopefully, let's cross our fingers guys and hope that Ubisoft can get this out of their system. If they can get this kind of strange thing out of their system and learn from the mistakes of Settlers Kingdoms of Anteria and make a cool game in this direction, hopefully they can also learn from the mistakes of that painful beta and make a really nice Settlers game, like exactly what people want. You know, maybe not though. It probably will probably won't happen. But one can hope. I've still got my fingers crossed. Let's keep them crossed until next year. It'll be hard. How am I going to eat? How will I eat with crossed fingers? So I hope you enjoyed this, guys, and I am a big fan of the Settlers franchise. I had to give this a look. I had to check it out. I love Settlers 3. I love Settlers 4. I love city building games. Maybe I'll like this game. It looks pretty cool. We'll see. Now my personal elemental alignment is an attack helicopter, and I don't see this here guys, so I think that my minority is being underrepresented, and I feel quite annoyed and triggered by that guys, so I'm going to go on Tumblr and complain.